Now, this video is going to share some information on using CA, cyanoacrylate, that we get from Brodac.com to repair motorcycle fairings or anything that's made in a similar manner. This glue, it's actually glue to be honest, is made for aircraft, model airplanes, boats, whatever you use it on, but it's exceptionally good at repairing fairings. And in this case, we have to replace a piece that's missing, and we have to fix tabs, and then we want to refinish the part to better than new, and we're all done. But the thing that makes this possible is the CA, and this is some great technology I think you can use. And we're going to try to show on this video some of the steps that we had to go through to restore this Benelli set of bodywork. This bodywork had chunks missing, had tabs broken. There was giant parts of it that had to be rebuilt and reinforced. And I think you could use this on the same technology, reinforcing the tabs. And this is something I've done on all the tutorial videos. Make a pattern from the side that's good if you have a good side. Use that pattern to now, and that's O-Pee-Chee wood, by the way. You can buy that in a hobby shop. It's extremely strong. It's very thin laminates of O-Pee-Chee wood, like a plywood. They use it to build aircraft. That's what it's for. It's called O-Pee-Chee wood. Now, of course, CA and O-Pee-Chee wood make a great, almost as strong as carbon fiber, a repair. So in this case, we're replacing a piece that's actually missing. That piece has a piece missing. So the wood piece gives us a pattern of where we have to put the carbon fiber. I have a whole row of toe, carbon fiber toe unidirectional. The CA and the carbon fiber make it incredibly strong, much stronger than the factory ever made the part. Now, a lot of exotic bikes, and Benelli happens to be one of them, the minute you have a problem, they break all the tabs, and believe me, I've fixed so many of these. But once you reinforce it with the carbon fiber, even if you're not doing any of the cosmetic work on the other side, reinforcing the tabs is a great idea. We just did that on a Buell recently. Fix all the tabs, and even the ones that aren't broken, reinforce them. Because in time, and I don't know why the factories make these so flimsy, it would be very easy to mold that a little bit thicker or in some way re-engineer it. But we can outsmart them. Now, the carbon fiber toe and the CA make great repairs for any tab that's broken. And before you do any cosmetic work at all, any cosmetic work, you've got to get the structure right. And I've said that on all the tutorial videos of repairing things. CA is a wonderful, it's like the real word is cyanoacrylate for people that are not familiar with it, and it replaces chunks. Like this chunk is missing, so I just took a piece of scrap carbon fiber and CA, traced it to that shape, and I have plenty of scrap carbon fiber in the shop, and then I have a part. That tab is now stronger than the original tab if you went and bought a brand new part. Now, this always becomes a labor of love when you do this. This is not for the faint of heart. You're just going to put a couple drops of glue and walk away. That it takes time to do this the right way. You can fill in any gaps with thick CA, but when you're done, you've got a tab that's stronger than the original part. So this is the whole point of this. Now, if you're wondering, yeah, could you just get new fairing parts? Maybe you can and maybe you can't. But the price of these fairings for these exotic bikes, and then the pay to have them shipped from Rome or wherever they have to come from, and this piece was missing, a whole chunk was missing, and it was cracked. We had our work cut out for us on this part. It started out to be a labor of love, and it turned out to be a tremendous labor of love. But in the end, the parts were better than new. And this is the kind of information that on this video and on all of my videos, I try to share the information, because I have done this many times with great success, and it isn't out of the realm of an average person to do this, not anybody. Now, as we move along on this repair, the next part is to make a replacement piece for this. Now, I'm doing that with making a bunch of patterns, one that shows the shape from the back, one that shows the piece from the front. It's very similar to how you would make a pattern for a machine shop part. And luckily we had one part that wasn't broken, so I just transposed all the dimensions over, making the first piece, this is going to be the female pattern. That's actually the female pattern right there, and I marked it. So I made sure it matched the other side, and it was pretty close. And this had to be very strong, because what's going to happen, the mirrors and the fairing mount to this. This is a structural part. So I got the whole inside sanded out really, really well, using a painting stick and some 80 grit paper. Really get it good and rough so that the CA got a great bond. Because this is something, if this is wrong, after all the refinishing, it cracks and we're done with it. That's right back to square one. So making that original pattern, and now I know what the outer shape should be, the outside shape. So now what I have to do is take the inside, make a pattern for the inside. And what I'm going to do, and this is pretty much the same as you do on the tabs, you make a reinforcement part that attaches to the back real strong. Now you really don't want this to be a compromised joint, because that's going to be what ultimately holds the whole thing after you put the carbon fiber on. And this is that O-Pee-Chee wood again, 1/64 or 1/32. Once that's tacked in place and it's nice and solid, I can sand around it, make sure it's structurally the way I want it. And if you were trying to do this all in one step and make both shapes at the same time, a lot more difficult. It's easier to do the method, and I noticed from designing model planes that it's easier to make it in 2 steps. And it's the second step. Now we use our pattern. That gives us the outside shape that we want. I also know the size of the hole where the mirror is going to mount. So now it's a question of, I just have to trim that plywood away, making sure that I have this as solid as a rock. Because this is structural stuff. If this were just cosmetic, if we had a cosmetic hole, it would be a lot different. But this is where the part actually is going to mount. So I'm using several layers of carbon fiber, plenty of CA, thick and thin, and just really doing it one step at a time, not trying to rush this. Again, because these parts are really, if they are available, they're available at 4 times what you would expect the price to be. But luckily for Vlad, we know how to do this kind of work, and this kind of a thing is what I do best. Is when there's a part missing, and I've done it on Mark Morgan's bike, or there's a hole in the fairing, or something that you have to do the same way you would figure out pattern making in a machine shop. This is where I can do, I think, a really good job. Now once that's all sanded in, now I need to know the outside shape. Well, once I get done with that, this is pretty easy. I have the pattern. So by having the patterns that I need ahead of time, this really makes it a lot easier. Now, sure, you could do it a lot of different ways, and every single repair I've ever done, there's other ways to do it. It's never a one-way thing, and that's the only way you can do it. But this way worked perfectly. Now, it was a lot of extra labor. I shaped this all in, because now I have to build up the carbon fiber on the top side. And once I have the foundation of the house, now I can build up layer after layer of carbon fiber until I get the thickness I need. And that's very easy with CA. You can just put one layer right on top of the other in a matter of a few minutes, because it takes 30 seconds or so to kick off. And for people that have never used CA, it's a skill. Once you pick it up, and you can pick it up very quickly right off any of my videos, you will be able to repair things that in the past, if you repair these things with Bondo or some other way, good luck. But O-Pee-Chee wood, model airplane plywood is almost as strong as carbon fiber, and it makes a great combo when you can use the O-Pee-Chee wood, the CA, and the carbon fiber. It gives you infinite things you can reshape, make holes where places where it's cracked, reinforce the holes, the tabs, and at the end it's a question of sanding it all in. Now that's the part, the cosmetic part of sanding things in, a whole nother issue. Once that part is solid and it roughly has the shape that we're looking for, now it's relatively easy to build up the thickness, put the final shapes in, reinforce it again with some extra CA. You never go bad. Now once I know the front is close, now I can go back to the back side and double reinforce this. So this is really going to be absolutely stronger than the stock part. And cosmetically, when we do the paint work, it'll be better than a factory job. So, and we've restored it without having anything shipped in from Italy or paid some tremendous price for these parts. And I know some of the parts on these collector bikes and the Bomotas and things that I've repaired for Vlad for his collection, they are some big bucks stuff. And the problem is, in some of them, not only big bucks, but you order them and they're used and they're worse than the ones you have. So doing this way, this is the devil we know. I always think it's the devil I know. And I can always put the shape back in with carbon fiber and CA. I can make any shape. I can blend. I can do all of that stuff. I can fix cracks. I can reinforce tabs. It's a simple skill, and once you learn how to do it, or you do it, if you're doing it for the first time, do it on a practice part or an old motorcycle part, and you'll pick up the skill. Don't glue your fingers together. That stuff will glue your skin together, and you have an infinite amount of choices for the shape, and it'll always be stronger than a brand new part when you're done. Now the next step on this, there's still some repair work to do, and there's a big giant gouge like somebody took a chainsaw and put a cut in here. Well, we're going to fill that with carbon fiber the same way we did all the other repairs, using CA and carbon fiber toe. Build it up higher than the surface around it by a little bit, and then carefully and meticulously block sand it in. Now yes, and I say this over and over again, I can just go get the trowel and mix up some Bondo, but this way, believe me, it's a little more work, a few hours more work in your overall job, but you'll never worry that it's going to crack again. This material, when it's done, the material a fairing is made out of isn't even close to being as strong as the repair. So it's like when you break your arm and where it's broken it heals, it's stronger than, you never break it in the same spot again. Well, that's the beauty of CA, and that's the beauty of doing it this way. It's a little more labor to do this and to block sand it down, but had I done that with Bondo, but I know years from now, you're not going to wake up some morning, go out to the motorcycle, and there'll be a big crack there. The CA is great for that. Absolutely great. Now, one of the things you think wouldn't take a lot of time to do, but it does, is sanding off the decals. The decals on this are under the clear, and they're very thick. They're vinyl. And the glue that they used, I guess in Italy or whatever, it may be made out of pizza crusts or something. Sanding those decals off was a nightmare, and it just took me forever. And I wet sanded, dry sanded, unbelievable. Now, because the whole part's going to get repainted, and we're going to put new stickers on anyway, but they had to be flat. You couldn't just paint over them or prime over them, because if you go to put the new stickers on, it'd be twice as thick. And then bury them in clear is going to be even worse. So the way to do this the right way, and to pay the price up front, like building a foundation for a house, block sand them down flat with some 220 or whatever. It doesn't even matter. The grit can be even rougher, because we're going to prime it and then resand the prime before we refinish these parts anyway. But doing all this body work with CA, what it does, it buys you the fact that somewhere in the very near future, it's not going to fail in service. And this repair, whether I like it or not, it just becomes a labor of love with a lot of block sanding. There were a lot of other little flaws. I didn't want to make the video way too long. And radiusing off all the edges, so there's no sharp edges, even on the parts we repaired. Checking it constantly with your fingers to see there's no sharp edge. Because where the edge is sharp is where you'll tend to get a crack in the paint. If it's radius, it's like radius in a connecting rod on a racing engine. A crack starts on a sharp edge. So the exact same technology with paint. Everything should be radiused, smooth to the touch. And in this case, I'm using a soft block that you would sand a car hood down to get all the areas that I've repaired, and all the areas, especially where those decals were, the stickers. And this, you don't see it on the video, but even the inside scoops here, I wanted them radiused. I wanted all that. I took a paint stick with some sandpaper wrapped around it to get in there, and made a couple of special sanding tools for the areas I couldn't get at conveniently. But because once this is done right, it's done. It's a good foundation for a house. Now, another thing, at this point, prep all and everything down, using a good degreaser, anything to get fingerprints and residue and whatever contamination there might be on the part and the paint, because I want that primer to bond like iron. I don't want to have that primer start to peel up or chip or whatever. Once I get a good coat of primer on that, and if necessary, I'll sand that with 400 and put another coat on. But I want all the body work I did, and you can see that part, you'd never even know that that was repaired. And it is absolutely stronger than if you just went and bought a new part from Italy, that's for sure. So this part of it really was a labor of love. Now, after painting the silver, and that was some special paint Vlad had to get, and I know it was pricey, the last thing was going to be to get the decals on and the clear and lay them out exactly where they would be if this were a factory job. And I do that with a piece of blue masking tape. Make sure I have it exactly where I want it by measuring it. It's parallel to the joint. Relatively straightforward and easy thing. These were nice decals, by the way. Of all the things that came with this project, the decals worked out great. I was always surprised because you never know when these decals are not going to lay down the way you want, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. This time they laid out pretty well. And when we finally got the final clear on, it looked perfect. So this was one step, one that I was really happy with. And because you never know when the decals, if they don't lay down right and they get wrinkles and bubbles and everything, makes you crazy. Anyway, the last thing now is to get the clear on. Make sure the part is perfectly clean. I don't have any fingerprints or anything on it. That's always an issue. And this is one of the steps. If you skip a spot and you miss a spot, oh God! And then it's right in the final clear. You look and you wish you could go back, turn the clock back, and do it over. But this, and it's tack rag down. That's a Harbor Freight tack rag, by the way. The clear, the 4-to-1 clear went on this job just absolutely perfect. And this was one of the nicest restorations. If you think of what this fairing looked like when Vlad brought it down here, chunks missing, holes in it, mirror mounts broken, pretty much every tab on there needed to be reinforced. And just the fact that you couldn't buy these parts made it, I was a little more inspired than normal to get this to come out exactly the way I wanted it to. And every step of the way on this job, I paid the price to get it absolutely perfect, so that there would never be a time when I have to look at it, especially if we're riding together or out at a meetup or something, and there's a big crack in the paint or a chunk. But this job stood the test of time better than you can ever hope for. Now, I get a lot of pride and satisfaction out of a job like this when it's over and done, and looking back over the steps it took, being able to put that on a YouTube video that for free you can see how at least I did it. And of course, there's many other ways to do all of these repairs. I try to share on my channel the way I've been able to repair and restore some of these, I call them unobtainable parts. And some of them have come out so much better than new that I'm glad I spent all the time doing it right. And I always say that do it right thing, because there's always shortcuts you can take, there's steps you can leave out, there's always a way you can make it that at the end you spent a little bit less effort, maybe a little bit less time, but then in the end you're always thinking, what if I put this whole bike back together, and at the end of it you hit a bump and a chunk of Bondo falls out. Anyway, this is a repair I was proud of, and I think it is done right, absolutely right.